Camouflaged within the concrete and the architectural splendor of Berlin is this thin strip of cobblestones. While this quaint brickwork is a reminder of Germany's infrastructure of many years gone past, it is also a reminder of where and how the city was divided for almost 30 years. Hi, I'm Matt, and welcome to another edition of Borders on Budgets. On this episode, we're going to follow the path of these cobblestones to see where the Berlin Wall had been erected that had divided the city between East and West.
Seems like this should be on the Blair Witch.
Next episode. A reminder, Borders on Budgets.
Completely closed, we cannot make it.
Perhaps no site is more iconic in Berlin than the Brandenburg Gate. However, it was here in 1961 where many of the city's residents could not gain access to the famed masonry and columns. To stop the flow of then 2.5 million East Germans fleeing their communist and totalitarian state after World War II, DDR officials on the evening of August 13th, 1961 began dividing Berlin with the construction of the wall. Much of the new construction in Berlin is on what was then the east part of the city. On this corner is a concrete labyrinth, a memorial to the victims of the Holocaust. It stands out even more because of the surrounding construction. Across the street from the Holocaust Memorial and down the street from the Brandenburg Gate is the new American Embassy for Germany, all of which had been on the East Berlin side of the wall. And a few buildings down from the embassy is the Russian consulate in Germany. So, 30 years after the Berlin Wall has fallen, these two ideological combatants of the Cold War still find themselves in close proximity to each other. Since the initial dismantling of the wall on November 9th, 1989, and the subsequent reunification of Germany a year later, municipal officials are faced with the challenge of how to grow Berlin while still maintaining the city's historical past. Here's one such establishment that straddles where the wall had been located, so you can order the beer in the west and, drink it in the east. Another landmark location in Berlin is Potsdamplatz, a center of commercial and cultural activity. While West Berlin could have built up to the wall 30 years ago, on this side, this was the death strip, the no man's land, separating the last line of defense for the GDR and the first line to prevent East Germans from leaving their country. I'll follow the cobblestones through Berlin's traffic, but for the Christmas market, we'll make a slight detour. While it is curious to see an Asian pagoda in the heart of Berlin, upon reading the sign, it is understandable as to why it is here. Erected by the Embassy of South Korea, this is a reminder as to how the Korean Peninsula still remains divided to this day. Naturally, just inside East German territory is a watchtower that had been used by DDR border guards. While the posting is obscured by 30-year-old trees today, the concrete structure still maintains a menacing presence. I'll certainly take the opportunity to climb the watchtower and upon greeting visitors is this authentic machine gun, which would have been used by a border guard stationed here, that today the weapon does not work. The spray painted graffiti, that would have come after 1989, though the linoleum, or whatever the flooring is, that's just ugly for any time period. These trees and buildings in the foreground would have been planted or constructed after 1989, when otherwise this watchtower would have been overlooking the no man's land, or the death strip, between East and West Berlin. So Ralph is a guide at the watchtower, and how is it then that the tower was preserved from the wrecking ball?
As you can see on this picture right here, it's a picture from 2000. The Potsdamer Platz was already fully developed, but this area had remained a wasteland for many, many years. No one really cared about this land. It's still a wasteland to the right and to the left. So that's one of the reasons, maybe the reason why the tower is still here today. Because no one really cared about this land and nobody really cared about the tower.
This building was one of the few that remained standing in the death strip and served as a first line of defense for the GDR on its side of the Berlin Wall. Originally built 100 years ago, it was used by the Prussian government as a Ministry of Agriculture, the Nazi government for food security, as well as the GDR for its food provisions. Now, Germany uses it as the interior for environment, conservation, and nuclear security. It was along Niederkirchner Strasse where the wall neatly, if such a word can be used, bisected Berlin. It would have been here where West Berliners could have touched the wall, and while this building today is a center for municipal politics, it had been on the East Berlin side of the wall. This section of the Berlin Wall, about a couple of hundred meters, is one of the longer sections that are still in its original place. Any graffiti that's on the eastern part of the wall would have been spray painted on in the first year after the wall had fallen and before the German government stepped in and saved this historical relic. Meanwhile, it's what's on the other side of the wall that also portrays a darker side of German history. The museum Topography of Terrors details the rise and the fall of the Nazi regime, particularly the role of the Gestapo, the secret police, as the museum itself is located on the previous headquarters of the Gestapo. As repugnant as East Germany and the Soviet Socialist Bloc was in its governance of its people, at least that society was not based upon racial purity and the subsequent killing off of millions of people. I'll leave it up to the viewers to determine which political ideology, Nazism or communism, was worse. As eye-catching as the DDR flag was, with the hammer, compass, and wheat sheaves on the background of the black, red, and gold stripes, I have issues that these communist items should be sold as nostalgia pieces. But talking of communist capitalism, Travel World offers those who wish a taste of nostalgia with 1-hour tours in the iconic East German Trabant for €49. It's a hoot taking a tour in Berlin in a 26-cylinder vehicle. It's at the city's famed Friedrichstrasse where the wall took a couple of zigzags. These benches and table are at the corner where the wall was erected. That bench and this currywurst stand, this would have been in East German territory, and it is there where a large East German flag had been planted when the wall was up. The intersection of Friedrichstrasse und Zimmerstrasse contained Checkpoint Charlie, one of the few areas where crossings were permitted from the west to the east. Needless to say, the commercial activity at the intersection today was nowhere near what it was like on November 9, 1989, when East Berliners stormed Checkpoint Charlie after they received misinformation from the DDR Border Patrol. Away from the hustle of Checkpoint Charlie, along Zimmerstrasse is a small shrine dedicated to one of the first victims trying to escape the Berlin Wall. 1 year after the creation of the Berlin Wall, 18-year-old Peter Fechter was fatally wounded as he tried to cross the death strip. The DDR had a shoot-to-kill policy for anybody trying to escape to West Germany. Here is another example of avant-garde architecture that's being constructed on what had been East Berlin soil. The height of the Berlin Wall was 3.6 meters and divided West Berlin from East Berlin with a 43-kilometer perimeter. Additionally, separating West Berlin from East Germany was another 112 kilometers of fortification. During the 28 years that the wall stood, 136 people died trying to cross it. This has been another edition of Borders on Budgets. A reminder, Borders on Budgets, long distance hikes, slices of life, not a lot of money. From Berlin, Germany, where the wall had stood, thank you very much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Ooh! Tunnel! It's a tunnel! Oh, how neat! Woo, woo! I'll follow the cobblestones through Berlin's traffic, but for the Christmas market, we'll make a slight detour. Did you like this video? Great. Help Borders on Budgets grow. Hit the subscribe button below, and don't forget to leave a comment. And yes, please share this video with your friends who would like another glimpse of the history of the Cold War.